Hey guys, just wanted to do some shop rounds with you here and talk about some of the cool things that are going on right now. One of those things is Tru Oil finishing that I'm applying to guitars 56 and 57. Finally, these guitars have sat in cases probably for about 6 months, something like that, a really long time. It's very hard for me to get into finishing mode simply because the way my setup is right now, I have to stop whatever I'm doing, because whatever I'm doing produces dust, and really kind of switch over the whole shop to get it ready just for finishing mode. So it really kind of halts everything. Anyway, that will actually be changing soon because I will be expanding the shop. But I'm not going to get into that here. The other things I'm going to get into is a new Triple O design that I'm just starting, and a couple cool new tools and pieces of equipment that I have in the shop. So let's go check it out. Okay, so here we have guitar number 56, and in the background there is number 57, which I'll show you in a moment. But here is guitar number 56. I am only 11 coats in, and already this back looks fantastic. So towards the end of at the end of the process here, this will all be buffed out, and so it'll really shine then. I chose not to use pore filler, which actually I've chosen not to do on a number of recent guitars. What I have to do next, once I start applying coats to this again, because I really want to build this up to probably about 24 coats. The way I use my Tru Oil, I thin it, usually 50%, sometimes less than that with mineral spirits. And that way I can apply coats that are just hyper thin. The reason you want hyper thin coats is because we don't want any runs or anything like that, because we don't want to have to level the finish with wet and dry sandpaper. So if you really nail the application of your coats, you may not need to do any level sanding whatsoever. And that is always the goal for me when I finish with Tru Oil. And the sides came out super cool. Let me show you my favorite part about this guitar, which is this little framed, almost looks like a framed mountain here in the cutaway. That's just super cool. That's number 56. And this here is number 57. A lot of wild things going on here, including figured redwood for the top, tiger myrtle for the back. And for the fretboard here, I'm actually using zebra wood, and so for the first time really, I'm finishing the fretboard face, which I've never done before. So normally I tape this off like I did on the guitar behind me, but in this case, with a less stable wood and a very porous wood like zebra wood is, you want to apply that finish to it much in the same way that you would apply a finish to a maple fretboard. So I'm really excited, one, to see how it comes out, but also to get the feel for what that finished fretboard surface feels like when you're playing it. And in other news here, I am working on a new guitar, which is a Triple O. So the Triple O, by the way, same body size as the orchestra model, except we are going with a short scale length. So that's the 24.9 inch scale length, as opposed to the 25.34 inch scale length. So it's just a little bit shorter. And that means a couple of things. The neck, the portion of the neck that you play, will be shorter. The frets will be closer together. The string tension will be less on this guitar, so the instrument's going to have a looser feel as far as the playability on the strings there. And a couple things you have to adjust here. You have to make sure your bridge still lands in the correct place, since your whole scale length is scooched up just a little bit. And in addition to that, you know, your X brace comes right off of the bridge there, so even the X brace and most of the rest of the bracing pattern has to, or at least should be, shifted towards the sound hole just a little bit. So that's what I've done here. And the next drawing I have to make is a profile drawing for my neck angle, which anytime you design a new instrument with a different scale length, different gauge of strings, anything like that, it's never a bad idea. I mean, it's a very good idea to reassess your neck angle and not just cut the same neck angle that you do for a different model. So this is not for this guitar, this is for an orchestra model, but I'm just showing you this is the kind of stuff that I have to work out to get my neck angle. And in the new tool department, a new set of tools that I've purchased are these counter bores here. So these are for cutting counter bores in your tuner holes. Or really they're for counter boring any kind of hole, but that's what I got them for. So the way these work, you can see I have many different size pilot holes here. These are smooth and these are just your guide. These ride in your existing tuner hole. So if you had a 3/8 of an inch tuner hole, which I do for these guitars, you would use this pilot here and you place it in the bit like that and boom. So this is going to follow the existing hole. This is going to cut your counter bore. And this whole thing, by the way, goes in a drill press. So I've actually been thinking about, because it's kind of difficult to swap this out on your existing drill press setup every time. This is a specialty piece here. They drilled out the holes for the set screws so you can lock this thing in place. So you can't just use your regular spindle there. So I've been considering getting another drill press, just a cheap tabletop model, so I can set it up, dedicate it permanently for just this job. And it being a tabletop model, I can even, you know, stash it under the bench or something like that, so it doesn't get in the way. Because it's not a job I plan on doing all the time, but I also don't want to have to go through the trouble of setting this up every time. But that's just me. But anyway, this kind of begs the question, why would you want to counter bore your tuner holes? And in my case here, it's not that these are special tuners that require a counter bore. It's simply that counter boring the washers so that the washers sit down basically flush with the surface rather than sitting up on top of the surface. That way they don't damage the finish at all. So from a longevity standpoint of the finish on your headstock, counter boring the tuners, one, it makes it look kind of cool, like the tuners are inlaid into the wood, but then also it prevents damage to the finish, which if you've ever looked at really old guitars, you can see that flaking finish around the tuner washers. So that's one of those things you don't really see on low end or even medium end or even most high end guitars, but it's kind of a cool, nice to have thing. And here I'll show you it. Although right now there's gummy finish building up in the counterbores, but that's the idea of what I'm talking about. Those are counterbored to fit the diameter of my tuner washers. And also new to the shop here, I have some good air filtration finally. And really I have two people to thank for that. Mario Monero of Zanero Guitars and Carl Smelker. Mario for motivating me to step up my air filtration game in the first place, and Carl for pointing me specifically in the direction of the Axiom Stratus here, which been using this and big Jet 1000, was it Jet AFS 1000B model over there. Between these two devices, my shop air has just been super clean. So what I specifically like about the Stratus here is that this is meant to be mobile. It is meant to be point of source air filtration. So it's great for everything I do and everything that the students do up here in the front of the shop, because you can just pull this over to where you're working when you're hand sanding and things like that. And this will actually draw the really fine dust down and into the filter down here, and then it blows the clean air out the top up here. To turn it on, it's just a simple touch of that button there. And this is low power, that's medium, yep, and that's full. It's pretty loud. I guess that's the one downside, but what are you gonna do? It works great though, and I love the just elegance and simplicity of, you know, one, like I said, being able to just grab these rails and pull it around, and then also it just being a simple one-click button for all your options. Now, the other thing I have for air filtration here, and right now it's just resting on a stand. In the end, this will be fixed to the ceiling or the wall, but I've only had it for a couple weeks now, so I'm just trying it out in this location. This is the Jet AFS 1000B, and this will be my main unit, which will cover the bulk of the sort of volume of the shop here. So rather than it being a point of source air filtration, this is just for the general ambient atmosphere. Now this, I have a remote right here. This is much quieter than the other one. And this is the low speed. And that's its highest speed, and it's pretty damn quiet. Anyway, air filtration is just the first step for me here for putting in my new dust collection system, which will be happening later this year. I already did a separate video about my situation with the dust here, so I won't get into that. If you learned something here, please give this video a like and subscribe so you can be notified when I release a new DIY guitar making video. And if you want to really learn more, take one of my structured online courses at ericschaferguitars.com or register for a hands-on guitar building workshop here with me in Burnville, Pennsylvania.